morning, everyone in India. My name is MJ Shores. I am with Personal MBA Coach. We offer MBA admissions consulting services to prospective applicants, as well as GMAT or GRE prep. We've been around since 2008. We have a placement rate of 96% of our clients in top schools around the world. With us today, we have two wonderful admissions representatives from both Rotman and ISB. And I would like each of you to maybe briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your school. Amit?
Yeah. So I'm Amit Tyagi. I'm the Associate Director for Marketing and Admissions at the Indian School of Business. And I specially recruit people for the PGP program at ISB. I've been here for the last 10 months and we'll be very happy to interact with you and answer your queries today.
Thank you. How about you, Danielle?
Thanks, MJ. My name is Danielle Spence, and I'm one of the assistant directors at Rotman School of Management. Rotman offers a full-time 2-year MBA program that is very popular in India. That's probably why we have such a full house today. We have a great reputation in Canada. We're consistently ranked one of the best business schools. And of course, as part of University of Toronto, we also enjoy that strong recognition and international brand recognition as well. Looking forward to speaking to everyone today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for your time here. And what I would like to do is maybe begin with some questions. We'll start with you. And those of you who are attending, please feel free to ask questions in the comments section, and we would be very happy to answer those for you. So one of the questions a lot of people have is timing around the MBA application, right? Last year was unusual. People extended deadlines, they accepted them very late. But historically and traditionally, people wonder what the difference is between round 1 and round 2, and there's a lot of scuttlebutt out there. So Amit, can you advise people what is the best timing? Is round 2 too late for applicants?
Not at all. In fact, there are different cycles. The reason we have different rounds altogether is to cater to people who apply in at different times. So there's definitely no disadvantage in applying in round 2 versus a round 1, except for the fact that at ISB we offer maximum scholarships in round 1. But in round 2 also we offer scholarships maximum up to 75% of tuition fee waivers. So that's the only difference in terms of round 1 or round 2 at Indian School of Business. Apart from that, a candidate should apply to the round in which he or she feels comfortable and in which he or she is ready to apply. That's the biggest thing. So don't rush your application just because you want to meet a deadline for round 1 or maybe round 2. Concentrate on making a good application, concentrate on getting all your facts the application right, concentrate on getting all your details right, and when you are ready, apply then. So whether it's round 1, round 2 or round 3, it doesn't matter for us at all.
Wonderful. And I think most schools would agree with that. One of the questions people have is, if I'm an applicant from India or Asia in general, how do I measure up versus other people in the applicant pool? Am I at a disadvantage or an advantage as an applicant applying to your program or other programs? Danielle?
That's a question we get a lot, and that's for a lot of different reasons that I don't think I need to go into too much detail to explain, but one of the overarching reasons is the style of education that students from the continent of Asia are used to, and the style of education that is introduced at a very young age. I was educated in Canada. Canadians are not great standardized test takers. It's not how our education system works, and it's a great education system. I'm not going to criticize it, but it doesn't prepare its students for that kind of test taking. So when we're looking at global perspectives for admissions, obviously there is going to be different results from different countries and different regions rather. So the Asian region, yes, they do score higher, generally speaking, on the GMAT and the GRE. It is a standardized test, and that seems to be a trend that everyone knows, and it's not a big secret. But we have a very international and global program at Rotman. So we are looking at a bunch of different regions and countries, and those all have different outcomes for their GMAT and their GRE scores. My heart aches for especially Indian candidates who are very worried about the competitive GMAT. They think they need a 740, a 750, 760 to get into the program. We take a very holistic approach to admissions. So I really want to emphasize that to applicants for the program. We're looking at a bunch of different elements of your application, and really at the base, the basis of our admission is looking for well-rounded candidates with a high probability and potential for academic success and for professional success. The academic success part of the way we assess this is with a standardized test, of course, but as long as you're within historic ranges for our average GMAT result, so last year it was a 670, it's realistic to expect that you have a competitive chance of getting into the program. Another good way to kind of place yourself within a very competitive pool and get an idea of how strong your application is to consider what an average GMAT test taker looks like in your region. Part of the way we do our assessments is our assistant directors are broken down into different regions. So they are kind of comparing apples to apples. I'm not going to be looking at applicants from Latin America, let's say, who their test taking is very different from Europe, different from Asia, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a good question, and every region has its quirks, and every region certainly has incredible strengths and facets of the profile that trend similarly. But at the same time, other regions have facets of the profile that don't trend the same. Hopefully that answers the question for those asking about the Asian applications.
Now, one of the things we get from international applicants, particularly from India, is when they look at class profiles around the world, or particularly in the US and Canada, they list GPAs. Mm-hmm. What can you tell applicants from India in terms of should they translate the GPA, or do you just accept the first class, second class designation, Danielle?
Yeah. Sorry, Emma, I feel like I'm monopolizing, but this wouldn't really be too relevant for you based in India. So this is a question I do get a lot, and I don't think we covered it last time I joined GMAT Club. So thank you for that question. We do see a lot of students who use third-party services to get a GPA converted into the 4-point scale. If this helps put your mind at ease for the kind of space that you're going to end up in within the GPA calculation, that's fine, go ahead. But we have our own internal calculation system. University of Toronto has tens of thousands of students, and many of them are international. So there's very rare that we come across a transcript that we're not familiar with in terms of how the grades and the credentials are transferred over into the U of T system. When it's the classic UK system where it's first class, upper second, second class, you should really be an upper second at the minimum. That's a good guideline. Generally speaking, the average GPA is about 86 out of 100, I would say. So the 3.5 out of 4. But as Indian applicants will know, I went to school in the UK. I know this too. A 65 out of 100 in the Indian system is very different than a 65 out of 100 in the Canadian system. So not to worry, we do assess them in a slightly different way to account for this difference in GPAs. But an upper second range would be equivalent to the 3 to 3.5 range for the GPA conversion calculation.
Yeah, so I think what Danielle is highlighting here is that schools around the world are very familiar with different academic systems, and they assess them relative to where they studied. So I wouldn't be overly concerned with it. Last year, there were schools that were waiving the GMAT or GRE requirements because of the famous coronavirus. Is that still going on, Amit?
So we have not waived of GMAT or GRE requirement even this year or last year. But what we have done is we have given extensions for students who are not able to write GMAT or GRE in the months of September, August, June, July, August, September. So they could submit their applications in round 1 and still submit their scores after 2 months after the deadline, or I would say 1.5 months after the deadline. So that relaxation we have given to our students in terms of extension for submission of scores, but not a waiver as such. And now, since our next deadline is January 10th, we believe we have enough time. Students have enough time. The test centers in India have opened. The online testing has now become widespread. So they can take their GMATs or GREs by the time the next deadline comes in, which is January 10th. So we will not be giving any waivers or maybe even extension unless the situation so demands, or we see that the situation has changed drastically.
Okay. If somebody applies in round one, somebody here asked a question, they applied in round one, they did not get their GMAT scores submitted by October 31st. Do you automatically move them to round two, or do you make the decision without that?
No, we will not make a decision without that in round one. We'll move them to round two. The candidate is required to write to us saying that I have not been able to submit my scores and I'll want to move my application to round two. In case we don't get the scores by another 3-4 days, we will be writing to them requesting them to move the application to round two. So we will not make a decision based on no scores. Based on without the scores, as long as they don't tell us that they want to withdraw. So application will be automatically moved to round two.
Okay. Here's a great question that you hear across cultures, across schools. How do you assess a candidate who took a break from work to have a child and raise a child, and they've been out for maybe 5-7 years or so, and they're ready to come back and study and work? How do you look at them in the applicant pool, Danielle?
That is a good question that I actually haven't had in any of these sessions, so it's nice to have something quite new. Being a parent, even extrapolating and going out beyond maybe an elderly family member needs assistance or needs care, that does happen in extended families, not necessarily just taking time out for childcare, but also maybe taking time out for a sick parent or an elder within the household. Life does happen. We don't expect our students to be so laser focused on an MBA that nothing else is happening. Some of our best students, I can think of one in particular coming in this year. She has a gorgeous daughter who's really spirited and funny and smart. She took a couple years off to mother her child. She has one opportunity. You're probably only going to do one MBA in your life. You're going to have 1 or 2 children in your life, and you have a limited opportunity to be with them when they're young. We don't look at that in a negative sense. It is good to be self-aware of how you present that time off, how you explain that time off, but we certainly have parents who come into the program and are successful with applications to the program every year who have taken some time out of the workforce to child rear. The only caveat to that is the full-time MBA at Rotman is a very junior program. So we do assess applications in terms of years of work experience. The work experience goes or is a little bit influenced by the number of years out of your undergraduate degree. So if it is a long period of time, more than 4 years, I would say, you may just be finding that you're then becoming a little more senior in your career, senior in your years out of your undergrad to necessarily be the exact right fit for a full-time MBA. That's the only caveat that I would make to that. But certainly we have people who have gaps on their CVs because they've had family responsibilities in the form of caring for others. And that teaches you a lot and goes towards those qualities of well-roundedness and resilience and perseverance that we look for in candidates.
Ahmed, how do you look at re-applicants, particularly if they applied, somebody's asking here, they applied in stage 2 for YLP, now they're thinking of going to the full PGP. How do you look at that, as well as just re-applicants in general?
Sure. So I'll take that in 2 parts. First is re-applicants in general, and then I'll talk about the YLP re-applicants. So in terms of re-applicants for the PGP program, people who apply 1 year and they don't in a particular year and they don't get through, next year they'll be required to write an additional essay mentioning what has changed in their profile since the time they last applied. So that is an additional opportunity for the candidates to showcase their recent achievements, showcase achievements in their personal sphere or in their professional sphere, which they have not been able to include in other parts of the application or really highlight them. So that is actually an opportunity for re-applicants to write an additional essay and impress the reviewers of the admissions team. Now, in terms of people applying from YLP to PGP, they will not actually be re-applicants. So YLP is a different mode of entry to PGP, and and if you do not get through YLP and you apply to a PGP program directly, then you are not actually a re-applicant. You are applying as a fresh applicant to PGP, and you will not be considered a re-applicant. So we have no biases towards re-applicants. In fact, we encourage people to apply again next year, because once they have got that overcome their shortcomings, or they have got more experience, improved their test scores, they are more than welcome to come and apply to us and be considered in the next round.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you'll find most schools are very open to re-applicants as long as they just see that they've progressed and changed. And I think that's what makes admissions so hard. Wouldn't you both agree? Is that it's more of an art than a science, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So another question is asked. Another person is asking something about, well, what if I've worked in auditing where you work on specific projects as opposed to like IT where you're going from one program to another over time? How does that affect their candidacy, Amit?
So I did not get the first. They're working R&D. Let's say they're working R&D versus
yeah, they're doing auditing. I wasn't real clear about the question, but they said in auditing you're working on real specific projects. Okay. As opposed to IT, where you work on very different programs each year. And I think the question is, what kind of impact does that have on their candidacy? Is that less valuable?
Sure, got it. So we have a very huge cohort at ISB every year. We get 880 students every year, and it's a very diverse cohort. We get people from different industries, different professions, and from different educational backgrounds. So people who work in different industries, they need not worry about whether they'll miss out because they're not working in a particular X industry, IT industry, or maybe automotive industry. We do not look at industry in general. We look at what you have achieved. What are your achievements in your work? How have you progressed in your profession? That's it. That is what we look at, regardless of whether you're doing it in a auto industry or in an R&D setting or in a IT industry. And we understand, the reviewers at ISB understand that different industries have different parameters in terms of growth. So the growth in IT may be different from the growth in, let's say, investment banking or a banking. So we will make sure at our end that nobody is at a disadvantage, either whether they come from a particular X industry or a Y industry. And in fact, we have a representation from more than 25 plus industries in last year's cohort itself. So no students should not be worried about coming from an X industry or a Y industry and be feeling missing out, not being from IT or any other space.
Okay. Someone here is asking a little bit about entrepreneurship and how that is looked at in terms of developing like lead roles, right? If you work in a startup or you're an entrepreneur or something, what can you share with us, Danielle?
We love to see entrepreneurs. It obviously communicates a lot. Once we see that you've run your own business, that fills in a lot of blanks for us in terms of understanding your work ethic, your capabilities, and how flexible you are as in the workforce. So we do like to see entrepreneurs. We see a fair bit of entrepreneurs coming into the program and applying to the program. I think when you are running your own business or you're part of a family running a business, which we also see a lot, is just be cognizant of the fact that we may not be able to Google your business. So give us some context. What does the business do? Is this business sustaining your lifestyle? Is it a true contributor to society and the community? And what hats are you wearing within this business? I think also you need to be thoughtful when choosing references when you're an entrepreneur. So whether those references might be vendors or longstanding clients, we certainly don't want to necessarily see family members on the references when it comes to entrepreneurs or family-run businesses. If it's virtually impossible, you may have to go back to your undergraduate days. We ideally like professional references, but on the occasion, sometimes applicants need to choose academic references. But certainly with entrepreneurs, please just set the stage for us. Explain what the business is, explain what the functions are of the business and the nature of the business and how it's impacting your life and how you are in turn impacting the business.
Okay. It looks like we only have about 4 minutes left. What piece of advice from your experience would you like to give people here thinking of applying for an MBA program? Amit.
So the first and foremost is to have a clarity of thought in terms of why you want to do an MBA. So MBA is essentially a tool, it's not an end in itself. So candidate should be really clear on why he wants to do an MBA, what he intends to gain out of it, and what kind of career he foresees for himself post MBA. And second is when you want to do an MBA. So whether this is the right time, whether you have got enough experience, whether doing MBA at this particular time is a correct choice for you. And third is from where do you want to do an MBA. So if you foresee yourself working in a particular country, it's always advisable to do an MBA from that particular country so that you understand the nuances of business in that particular context and setting. So those will be my 3 advices to the candidates.
Wonderful. That's great advice. And people forget the why now, right? That's a huge problem when people apply. What advice would you give to everybody, Danielle?
Emmett gave 3 really great pieces of advice, so I would echo those. In addition to that, looking more at the process of admissions, I guess, because he has already noted 3 of the most important factors in considering an MBA. With the application, I would say students need to trust the process. They need to trust that occasionally we have to make admissions decisions based on what we understand your future aspirations to be. They may not match up as well with Rotman as another program might for you. Sometimes it sounds odd, but in admissions, occasionally you have to be cruel to be kind. Sometimes that your school isn't the right fit for a candidate. They're really keen and really passionate about something that isn't a common fit with the institution. So bear things like this in mind. It is a process. It can be a roller coaster of emotions, but try to keep perspective when going through the application process. Don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be too hard on us either, but it will all sort out. Also, the other thing is this isn't a singular chance in the trajectory of your life. We have lots of people, as I'm sure Emmett does, who apply 1 year, go away for 2 years, really improve their profiles, and then get in like that with a big scholarship award and go on to have a wonderful time in the MBA and beyond. So those would be my pieces of advice with the application, because I do see, unfortunately, students getting themselves stressed out and worked up. It is supposed to be a competitive process, but it's also supposed to be a little bit fun and a little bit self-exploratory. And I really hate to see students really getting themselves upset and wound up, because there's always different opportunities and subsequent years and different paths for everyone.
That's wonderful. And I guess to summarize all of the wonderful insights you guys have shared, it sounds like what you're saying is the most important thing when people apply is to be thoughtful, to be insightful, and explain their rationales, right? So you're not looking for any one answer or profile. It's a matter of the woman, like you talked about, Danielle, who stayed out to raise a child. How did she spend that time? Was she doing things to develop herself? And can she explain that? And Amit, similarly, you were saying the same thing, like why is an MBA a good thing for you and why is now a good thing for you? And it really is that holistic, and that actually works to the applicant's benefits.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing, MJ, just before we finish up,
Sure.
Don't tell us what you think you want us, what you think we want to hear. Be really honest, because it's not going to be the right fit if you're not forthright with what it is you actually want to do, what actually drives and motivates you, because it is, again, about finding that fit. And I think sometimes candidates put pressure on themselves thinking, what do they want to hear? I'll give them exactly what they want to hear. Just be your normal, authentic self when applying. That is really the best approach.
Amit, you're shaking your head. Do you have one final pearl of wisdom as well?
Yeah, so again, on the similar lens, I'll advise candidates not to self-reject themselves. A lot of candidates who feel that, oh, I may not be able to get into ISB, it's so difficult. So let us decide that. Give your best application and let us decide whether you're good enough for ISB or not.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Amit and Danielle. You've done a marvelous job. You shared a lot of really good inside information and perspectives that I think everybody will benefit from. Everybody who's been on this session, there are some Zoom rooms with both of these representatives from Rotman and ISB, so please sure to join them. We didn't get all your questions answered, but some of yours were very specific to their school, so they can help you in those Zoom rooms. Thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.